Welcome to Slash Bash, where today I am bringing you some of the best entitled parent Reddit videos of 2021. I am the manager and you need to leave forever. Let's jump right in. To set the scene, I was the manager of an outdoor pool years ago that resembled a small water park, and this pool was in the valley of the upper class region in Colorado Springs. The pool had several water slides with weight height requirements, a decently long and winding lazy river, one of those mushrooms that pour water all along the edge, and a structure in the zero entry portion of the pool that was meant for smaller children that wore red wristbands. A red wristband meant that a child was either under the age of 5 or unable to pass a swim test, both of which meant that a parent or guardian had to be within arm's reach of the kid wearing the red wristband at all times. This is pertinent to the story. It was the beginning of the season, and a solid third of my lifeguards were 16 and 17-year-olds working their first jobs that had also just graduated a lifeguard course that I'd co-taught. This detail is important. It'll be good to remember later that many of my guards were extremely green and had never made an actual rescue before, though they were well trained and competent. It was a Saturday morning. Most patrons were pass holders and could come and go as they pleased. The problem family of the morning held no such pass and had to pay at the door for 2 children and 1 adult. Problem Dad tried to send his kids through to the locker rooms without paying for them, which wasn't a great start to his day. He said he didn't realize kids weren't free and the front desk girl let him in. Both children ended up wearing red wristbands. Problem Dad threw a mini fit when the girl at the front desk told him he'd have to be within arm's reach of his small kids at all times, but conceded and entered the pool area. Problem Dad was on my radar within an hour for attempting to allow both of his kids to go down a slide reserved for green wristbands. He also walked away from his kids several times to be whistled at by a guard and shooed back to his kids that were always in the water. He was given a final warning by one of my head guards and told he'd have to leave if he broke a rule again. Next thing I know, I hear the long whistles that indicate a guard is jumping into the water to make a rescue. I see the other guards shift stations like they're supposed to, and a head guard go get the AED first aid kit and my attention to call 911. They're working like a well-oiled machine. I speed walk to the point of the rescue just in time to see one of my brand new guards pulling a 5-year-old boy out of the lazy river. He's alone. I immediately recognize that he belongs to Problem Dad and look around for him. No sooner than I spot him do I realize he is pissed. The guard that pulled the kid out of the lazy river has laid him down on the concrete and he's coughing up water, but is fine. The head guard tries to help him up, but the dad rips him out of that guard's hands and starts screaming at and downright berating my 17-year-old guard that made the rescue. He can swim just fine. What are you doing? You scared him crapless. Are you stupid? I have absolutely zero tolerance for bullying, let alone for a grown man screaming at a kid for doing their job, so I immediately step in and tell him to calm down. He turns his attention towards me, gives me a quick head to toe once over, and demands the manager. I didn't wear makeup to this job, am fair-skinned with red hair and freckles, and was wearing a guard suit with guard shorts instead of manager's clothes, because I had been filling in for a head guard during their lunch. I looked about 20 and still do now, at 32. Nevertheless, I was in charge. I am the manager, sir. Ha! The real manager, someone that can legally buy a beer. Where is he? I am the only manager. I am 26 years old and I am in charge of everything here. He went on to claim he'd been mere feet from his son and was about to help him since he was struggling when the girl over there jumped in and caused a scene, scaring him. I'd not seen the rescue from the start, so I asked the head guard what happened, though I already knew. He told me the boy was fully submerged in the current of the lazy river, and if the guard hadn't jumped in, he'd have likely been getting CPR as we spoke. I looked back at Problem Dad and said he owed my guard an apology and a thank you. He He snorted and told me that wasn't going to happen, so I told him he was no longer welcome in my pool. Problem Dad threw a big fit, this time demanding a refund and threatening to get me fired and calling us all names. I refused the refund and walked right on his heels until he was through the facility and out the front door, where he continued to yell, and I called the cops. They came fast, as this wasn't a terribly uncommon occurrence at our affluent pool. He was trespassed and he ruined any chance of summer fun for his kids that year. I told the cops to talk to him about dry drowning and to insist his kids see a doctor, and wiped my hands of the situation. When I made it back inside, the girl who'd made the rescue was having a full-blown panic attack in the guard room. She was sobbing, saying she had no clue how she saved him, that the man was right and she was an idiot, and more. I comforted her and told her that her training kicked in and she did everything she was supposed to do, potentially saving the kid's life. Then I gave her the rest of the day off, and I bought her some nachos and a soda. The next weekend we did an in-service based on lazy river rescues, and my green little guard was awarded Lifeguard of the Month, which she and her mom bragged about all summer. Problem Dad called to complain about me to my manager, who'd read my incident report and was promptly told he should be glad his kid didn't die, the wristband protocol, that lifeguards have final say in safety measures at all times, and that the little girl manager had final say in trespassing him. The end. Free seat entitled couple gets karma served for 14-hour flight. This happened while I was married. I still tell the story now and get a lot of smirks and haha yes karma at her best comments. So my husband, now ex, and I were one of the last to board the plane as he had misplaced his boarding ticket and we had to search for it. When we got on, we were walking up the plane and could see our row. The plane was pretty much full and all settled in. A couple older than us sat in our row of 3. I checked our tickets and then asked the couple what seats they were supposed to be in, as those were ours. They refused to move. They had scored 3 seats to their 2 bottoms, whereas the row in front had a very slim girl at the window. The air hostess came over, and as they were older and playing the age card, the hostess asked us to sit in the seats in front. My husband argued that in the event of an accident, our names were not on the right locations. However, the hostess said she would swap these over. So we sat down next to the slim girl who took up no room whatsoever. The couple behind were very loudly gloating at their win and discussing how they would have a very pleasant 14-hour trip home. My husband told me as soon as we can to recline the seats as he was pissed by their gloating. So here we are, settled, when this man starts walking up the plane. He was a very, very large man, long dreadlocks, shoving a baguette in his mouth as he made his way up the aisle. My husband just looked at me and smiled as he realized the only spare seat was that window seat, which would have been next to mine. And yes, karma took a dump on the gloating couple's lap as the man asked them to move so he could get into his seat. Once settled, he took up a lot of the space, and once in the air, the lady called a hostess down and started having a strop about how we had stolen their seats and that we had refused to move when they boarded. Sadly for the lady, our argument at the start of the flight had been witnessed by the staff, as everyone else was settled by then, so she was shut down by the staff who refused to move us. They had a miserable flight, as the guy kept getting up for the toilet, extra drinks, and extra snacks. Whoever he was a complete gem of a human being. A short time does not mean you can go on a cruise. It was about 10 years ago when I was married to my second and last wife, now ex-wife. I was a chef and my ex worked retail. We weren't rich, but we were doing well for ourselves. We each owned our own cars. We shared all the money equally because it didn't matter who made more than the other. We were married, so everything was equal. My ex wanted to take some classes, and instead of working her retail job, she planned to babysit for extra income, and I was all for it. If that's what made her happy, go for it. After she got settled with her classes, we put out ads for her babysitting side job. I know that what she was offering for the price she was asking was much lower than daycare by a lot, but she wasn't in it for the money, she just loves kids. She took on 3 kids, from a 4-year-old boy to an 8-year-old girl. The other was a 5-year-old girl if I remember correctly. All the kids were good and we had a large fenced-in backyard they could play in with lots of kids' toys. Snacks were provided by us. Most of the parents were friendly when they came in to pick up or drop off their kids. One mother, though, would come in and just say, "See you later," to her little girl, the 5-year-old, and walk away. No kiss, no I love you, nothing. My ex took in kids from 2:30 p.m. when the younger kids would get out of their respective schools. Kindergarten or preschool, not sure what it was called. Then from 3 p.m. for the older girl. Things seemed to be going well and my ex was happy. Then one Monday morning, not afternoon like the schedule said, the entitled mother dropped her daughter off. My ex was in classes, so the entitled mother was lucky it was my day off. I said I would watch her until my ex got back and then she would take over. The entitled mother just shrugged like it was nothing and set a duffel bag just inside the door. I had never been part of this childcare business except to talk to the kids and entertain them now and then, so I didn't know the drop-off and pick-up procedures. Then, like always, the mother just turned and walked away. When my ex got out of her classes and saw the girl, she asked where her mom or dad was. The little girl said, "Mommy is going away for a few days. She said I am staying here with you." Immediately, my ex started calling the girl's mother only for it to go straight to voicemail. The entitled mother had a listing for another contact number under the name of Dad that went to voicemail as well. My ex watched all 3 kids as usual and the parents of the other 2 kids came on time and left. This little girl usually got picked up at 6:30 p.m., but not that day. That time came and went, then 8:30, then it was close to 10 p.m. The entire time my ex was calling these numbers with the same results, nothing but voicemail. By this time, the little girl had fallen asleep, and so we put her in the spare room. Then my ex called the police to let them know what was going on, but she told them that we would keep the child with us for now until we reached the mother. After many tries to both numbers with no better results, I went onto Facebook and found this woman's profile. I was going to look for a family member or a contact we could call. As soon as the homepage came up, my jaw hit the floor. There was a picture of them on a cruise ship deck as it was leaving port. I called in my ex to see and she was as flabbergasted as I was. Going through her friends list, I saw her mother. I contacted her mother to let her know what was happening and to tell her that someone had to come pick this girl up. We didn't sign up for this. Her mother told us she would be there as soon as she could. After close to 2 hours, the grandmother showed up to collect the little girl, but she wasn't alone. She brought the little girl's father along. By the way the girl squealed out, "Daddy!" then ran and hugged him, I knew it had been a while since they saw each other. We invited them in for coffee, and the grandmother told us the story. From what she told us, the entitled mother had ran off with some rich guy without telling anyone where she was going and had taken her daughter with her. The guy on the cruise ship with her was the man she ran off with, not her husband. Her husband called the police from our place and had them come out to us as proof of abandonment by the entitled mother. I showed the officer the Facebook photo dated just the night before. He got the father and grandmother to go with him to the police station to fill out the paperwork, but took our statements at our house. We signed them and they were gone. We didn't hear from the mother for the next 3 weeks and thought it was odd that she wouldn't call to go nuclear on us. Then, a couple of days later, we heard some excited banging on our door. When I opened the door, I saw the father beaming with joy, holding his daughter's hand. I invited them in, and he filled us in on all the juicy details. The entitled mother made big money, and the father was a stay-at-home dad. Throughout the last year they were together, she had been distancing herself from him. When he confronted her about it, she said he was delusional. One day, he drove to the store to pick up some odds and ends, but when he got home, she and his daughter were gone. All there was a note saying goodbye. It said he would never see either of them again. The police seemed useless. She had started an affair while they were still together. Around the same time, she started acting different, but he hadn't clued in. After she ran off, he took the note to her mother, who did everything she could to help, but her daughter was ignoring her too. The grandmother had even hired someone to find her daughter. It was just by chance we found them, and they couldn't believe their luck. The father told us that the mother had received some major and some minor criminal charges: child abduction, child endangerment, child abandonment, possession of a controlled substance, resisting arrest, and vehicle theft. I guess she rented a car at one airport and never left the keys with it, nor told anyone where she parked it because she wasn't answering her calls or texts. The reason for this? They left their phones home so they wouldn't be bothered on the trip. I don't remember all the charges, and I may have gotten one or more of these ones wrong too. But the father said he now has 100% custody of his daughter. The mother got in the area of 16 years in total. She was also ordered by the court to have zero contact indefinitely or until she finishes her jail time and extensive therapy. The father was also awarded the house and all assets because he didn't have an income or way to support his daughter, and through the marriage he had been a stay-at-home dad. He was also able to get money from the company that she worked for. They cashed out all stocks or whatever they were, and he got that money as well. The other man, the one she went on the cruise with, owned a smallish company with his wife. When this all came out, his wife started proceedings for a divorce, and since the company was started by her family and he didn't buy into it, it all went to her. She was also taking him to court for more things as well. In the end, he had nothing and his wife had it all. He wasn't charged with any of the wrongdoings because he wasn't there to drop the little girl off. My ex was sad to be losing such a sweet little girl, but they stayed in contact. As far as I know, they are still in contact. A little later, the dad got a job with the kitchen I worked in as a server. I didn't get him the job, he did that all himself. I only put in a good word with my boss. I am long gone from that place, but I heard that he is now a co-owner of the restaurant. I hope her cruise was worth it. My mom wants me to repay her the plane tickets. Let's jump right in. So last year, my mom wanted my wife and I to fly with her and our 2 kids to Wyoming to see my older sister. We were all ready to go when, at the last minute, my older brother randomly texted the group chat my mom and sister had with us about the trip. He said he was looking forward to seeing us. Here's the problem with that. I specifically asked my mother if my brother was going to be a part of this trip. She swore up and down that he was not going to be anywhere near us. He had just gotten out of prison, again. I don't like my older brother because he is a liar and a thief and some inappropriate nastiness he did to me when we were younger. My family downplays what happened and even tells me that certain events didn't happen. My older brother is a narcissist who needs people to like him. He feels threatened when he knows someone doesn't like him and becomes really hostile. That's pretty triggering for me. He does things like follow me into a room alone to trap me and tell me how much of a witch I'm being to him. Stuff like that. I just can't stand it, and no one wants to see that. So after confronting my mother for conspiring against me while planning the trip, my wife told my mother that we were no longer going on the trip. Instead, I shut off my phone and we took our kids on a family trip on our own. There was a bunch of family drama, but eventually we reconciled. My mother doesn't like how much I will defend my boundaries, but we get by. She called me yesterday to tell me the plane tickets from that trip were still active, but only the 4 of us can use them because they are in our names. My mom can't transfer them to her name or use them herself even though she paid for them. Whoops. She wants me to pay her back the price of the 4 tickets as well as use the tickets before the end of the year on a trip with her to see my sister. I bought them for you, so it will have to be a trip with all of us. There is no way in any realm of hell I'm paying her for stuff. The wife and I don't know where we are taking our kids yet, but we still have a few months to decide. The time I gave a kid a reality check. So this is my first post here, so be kind. A few years back, I was traveling from or to India. I cannot remember, to be honest. I booked my seat in the back of the plane knowing that families with younger kids are usually seated to the front, so I hoped to stay away from screaming kids on a long flight. I reach my seat and happily sit down next to an empty seat and an empty row behind me. Last aboard was a family of 3, mother, guy, the father maybe, and kid, about 6 or 7 I'd guess. Of course, they are seated right behind me. Ugh. As soon as they were seated, the kids started to kick my seat in a super monotonous rhythm. Twice the ugh. A few minutes go by and I turn around and kindly ask the kid to stop it since it is annoying. With a smug grin, it stops, just to restart faster this time. Time passes, still kicking in my lower back. I ask the kid again, this time a bit more determined. Mind you, I am 6'2" and about 100 kilograms or 220 pounds. Same stupid face, no reaction. So I turn to the mother and ask her to tell the kid to stop. With the most pretentious look and tone, she gave me the, "We don't say no to our little prince. We think he needs to find his own limits, and we will not raise him with rules." Thrice the ugh. The kicking proceeds. I look at the kid, keeping in mind that he is A, in kindergarten or elementary school, and B, the prince. Buckle up, buckaroo. I lean to him, look him straight in the eye, and say very calmly, "There is no Santa Claus. Your mom lied to you." Oh boy, he looked at me blankly. The kicking stopped. What happened now was just, he turned to his mother, hitting her, screaming full power. The mom yelled at me why I would scar her little prince like that. In the same pretentious tone, I answer, "I believe kids should find their limits themselves, and when a stranger tells your kid to flipping stop the kicking against his seat, he should listen next time." I put on my headphones, took a sleeping pill, and ignored the tantrum from hell that happened behind my back. This happened like 3 or 4 years ago, but I just remembered it now and thought I would share. Me and my cousins were staying in tents at a fairground next to some softball fields, where softball tournaments were going on for the weekend. My cousins and sister had all played in the tournament, but I didn't. It was Saturday night and all of the games had finished except for the 16 and under championship game, which my older cousins wanted to watch, so we all walked from our campsite to the fields. Me and my younger cousins, who cared nothing about the game, went onto the one field that was never used for the tournament because it was overgrown with grass. We climbed on top of the dugouts, the roof of which was probably about 4 feet off the ground since these were solid concrete dugouts built into the ground, and we began watching YouTube videos on my sister's iPod Touch. Like 10 minutes later, a little kid who was probably about 6 walked up to the backside of the dugout, which, if you know how softball and baseball fields are set up, would be against the fence. So this kid was on the other side of the fence, and immediately just tells us we have to get down. We all kind of just ignored him, not caring much. The kid continued complaining to us to get down, but eventually gave up and left. However, a few minutes later, he returned with an adult woman who started screeching at us that we were going to get hurt from falling, that we were damaging the property, that we weren't supposed to be there, and whatnot. By now, we had attracted a bit of attention because there was this random lady screaming at a couple of preteen girls through a fence. The lady tried to get some other people to help and even asked for our parents, but nobody really said anything. Finally, she said, "I'm the owner of this park. I need you to get down and we're going to find your parents." When she said that, we actually were about to listen to her when suddenly another woman behind her said, "No, I'm the owner. Those kids are fine." The woman immediately shut up and left with her kid, probably extremely embarrassed. Karen at a comic book store of all places. So this literally just happened a few days ago. Some backstory: I've been an avid comic book collector since I was a kid. I'm in my mid-30s now. Since COVID restrictions have eased up in my city, my local book and hobby shop decided to celebrate by having a rep from CGC come in, do appraisals, and if you want, have it sent away to get it thoroughly looked at, get your book sealed and graded, which greatly enhances a comic's value. I decided to bring in my Fantastic Four number 49, which has the first appearance of Galactus for you comic nerds like me, signed by Stan Lee. Rest in peace, Stan. Enter entitled mother and entitled kid behind me in line. The kid must have been like 16 or 17. I get a tap on the shoulder. Hey, I see you have a signed book. Do you want to trade for it? No thanks, this is like my second most prized book and it's signed by the late Mr. Lee. But my son has like 100 books he can trade you for, and I'll even throw in $100. I really want that issue, that cover is legendary. Sorry kiddo, you're gonna have to spend some time at cons or auctions to get your hands on this issue, and it won't be cheap. He needs that comic. At this point, the store owner stepped in and said, "No solicitation or private transactions in my store. I have a business to run." They left in a huff, giving me hard side-eye on the way. Afterwards, my book was appraised at 6.5 out of 10. I'm still waiting for the confirmation from CGC for the final number. With the signature, that puts its value at about just under $6,000. A weird woman believes sailboats are all public property. I'm a 43-year-old IT guy, divorced with 2 kids, a 9-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. I'm a member of a yacht club and own a smallish 34 Bavaria cruiser from 2008. Next to my kids, she's my pride and joy. Every year, I take 3 weeks vacation along with my kids and we go cruising for the better part of those 3 weeks. We have a small dinghy that basically serves as our pickup truck food haul. Now, because of COVID, we couldn't go anywhere outside our home country, so we said, flip it. We'll be tourists in our own country, and went for a cruise to all the small, cozy harbors we normally don't see. So, cruise is a go. My son knows about the lines and knows how to dock and whatnot. My daughter is the dinghy skipper during this. She loves that thing. We always have our club pennant flying as well as the Jolly Roger. Jolly Roger means kids on board, come play. We leave our home port and spend a day and night at sea to get the sea legs growing and sharpen up on our boating drills. Retired Navy, can't help it. On our 3rd day, we arrive at a small-ish marina, roughly 200 berths. In my country, calling ahead on VHF is not a thing, so the only thing to do is either going in with the boat or send in the dinghy to spot for a berth. Now, occupied berths are marked with a red sign, available is a green sign. My kids know this and are also learning to spot a fitting berth. Our boat is 3.6 meters wide and berths are different in width. So the trick is to spot a berth wider than 3.6, but not wider than 4 meters because that's the golden difference. Any berth wider than 4 meters costs a ton of money and is meant for bigger boats. Well, Captain Dinghy was volunteering, as always, to scout ahead while I and the XO were watching from just outside the inlet. She's equipped with, of course, life jacket, radio, not VHF since that requires a certificate, and a good idea on how wide 3.6 meters really is. Our dinghy happens to be 3.5 meters long, so as long as she can fit the dinghy from end to end between the posts, it fits, including the engine. Now, most people that hang around marinas are used to seeing children in dinghies and wouldn't raise an eyebrow over a 9-year-old girl in a small dinghy wearing a life jacket and looking for empty berths. However, not all people are like that, which we would soon find out. She found a spot and radioed that back saying, "I've got one, Daddy. It's the Jeep here and I'm waiting for you here. Over." I replied with, "Good job, en route now, Daddy out." The owners of the boats on either side are caring, nice older couples, and the portside neighbors especially are completely stunned by Captain Dinghy and her professionalism. They are small-talking when we arrive to the berth and help with mooring, for which I pay with a cold beer and a soda for the kids. Happy days all around. On the opposite side of the pier, a couple of boats are also flying the Jolly Roger, so the kids are off after a quick lunch. The berth directly opposite us is also available, but knowing from experience that will soon change. And how right I was. Later in the afternoon, we saw the arrival of HMS Karen and her sailing circus. They arrived while the nice grandparents next door and I were discussing nice marinas to visit, and as a matter of course, we stood by to help receive lines and help with mooring. To simplify their docking, it was a crap show. They had a trimaran, 3 hulls. The outer 2 can retract when you dock and extend when you sail. They knew nothing about the boat, so clearly a rental boat. After 5 or 6 attempts of docking with one side retracted, other side retracted, no sides retracted, full power plus screaming all around. The harbor master even came down to join us. Now we stand 8 guys plus 1 harbor master and just looking like, what the flip are you doing? Even my 7-year-old son comes by with some new friends going, are they for real? Grandma Port quickly provided some ice and soda for the kids. She was amazing. We managed to convince them, the wrecking crew, to throw us the forward lines and we could pull them in after they retracted both pontoons. This took the better part of 1.5 hours. When they finally docked, they acted like they invented boating. I know that docking in a foreign port can be quite difficult, but when you need 8 people to help you, one might keep a low profile. Not that couple though. They were totally clueless about how to get shore power, water, and how to register with the harbor master, who happened to stand right in front of them when they docked. The harbor master is now trying to guide them in how to register, what to do regarding shore power and water, and boy did they listen. HMS Karen started full yell about how they have paid a lot of money to rent that boat and how they expected harbor fees to be included in the rent. And she threatened to report the harbor master to the rental company they used and get him fired for trying to extort money from them. After her endless monologue, there were about 8 to 10 guys laughing. The harbor master just looked at them and went, okay, these are the rules. Each marina requires a fee for docking. That fee covers power, water, and the space you occupy. It includes access to bathrooms, cooking facilities, and cleaning. Your rental company does not own any marina. Is that clear? The circus husband understood, but failed to convey the last part to HMS Karen, something we found out later the next morning. The next morning, we prepared to go underway. My kids are saying goodbye to their new friends, my son is pampered with cookies from Grandma Port and Starboard, broken hearts from the young girls in the marina. He's got blonde hair with curls and green eyes, a heartbreaker. And Captain Dinghy is getting ready to go underway. She's dressed in the uniform for the part, unicorn PJ pants, swimwear, and life jacket. Here's where the title comes into play. We are finishing our stay, meaning pulling our shore power cable, testing lights and systems, testing our bow thruster and prop, VHF and dinghy. While I'm standing at the stern ready to single up the lines so my curly-haired XO will have an easy job, HMS Karen comes running up to me. What are you doing? Good morning. We'll get underway now. We're going to this island recommended by Grandma Port. Enjoy your stay here. What? You can't leave. Pretty sure I can. Why wouldn't I? Because we want that boat. What? You want my boat? I'm laughing now. Lady, my boat is not for sale, so excuse me. We have to go. No, all boats are property of the rental company, and we called them yesterday and chartered that boat. Now hand it over or else. Lady, you're nuts. To XO, clear forward lines. To Captain Dinghy, meet up outside the marina, docking starboard side. Now, we are not attached to the marina anymore, and my son is rolling up the bowlines when HMS tries to grab the push pit to keep us in the marina. Well, she lost that battle. All stop, man overboard. She came up yelling and screaming. Starboard Granddad guided her on board their boat while asking her what the hell she was doing. Port Granddad called the harbor master. Is she okay? Yes, we've got her. Enjoy your trip, and we'll see you in port. We leave and head for the port. And oh boy, did I hope she was a one-time Karen. I'll write part 2 when I get back from the boat. Drying pillows, cushions, sails, and whatnot is a real bitch. An entitled mother won't keep her kids off my property. So I've referenced this story a couple of times to people and decided I'd tell the full tale. I live in a rural neighborhood. Everybody's got 3 to 8 acres, so we're all pretty spaced out. I live on 5 acres, and my nearest neighbors are a sweet elderly couple about 1 acre from me. They're perfect. The husband does yard work as a hobby and his wife bakes. We have a nice agreement where if I need something big chainsawed, he takes the wood down and uses it for the fireplace, and in exchange I trade recipes and bake with his wife. Honestly, they just like the company. I own my own home, have 2 horses, a cat, and recently my mom has also moved in because she was in financial trouble. I'm happy to help as she's good company and I'd do anything for her. And then everything changed when COVID attacked. So here's where things go south. My neighbor's son and his family, wife and 2 girls, 4 and 7, live in the nearest city and didn't feel safe. I don't blame them, and because my neighbors are saints, they opened their home and the brood moved right in. Up until this point, I was the youngest person in the neighborhood at 29, so having kids wander around is new for everyone. At first, it was no big issue. They stayed inside, got settled, maybe they were good kids. Total long shot, I know, but a girl can hope. So one morning, I'm letting my horses out into the front pasture, a Clydesdale and a Welsh pony, and I hear the most high-pitched squealing from next door. It was so shrill my Clydesdale second-guessed going outside, but cautiously proceeded only to be met with more squeals. I pop my head out and the 2 girls are literally losing their minds. And I get it. Little white pony and the horse from Brave, but still, they're large animals they don't know, so they should have the sense not to approach, right? Not a snowball's chance in hell. These kids sprint to the fence shrieking. The pony runs around in panic, and the Clydesdale stands there with the same what the flip look I've got on my face. Then the 4-year-old starts to go under the fence. Hell no! Don't you dare climb under that fence, said firmly and admittedly kinda harsh, but I'll be damned if I have my horses mow over a kid. I walk over to them and they look like they're about to cry, but I explain firmly that they are big animals and could hurt them easily and to never go over or under the fence. They go home, I clean stalls. An hour in, I hear someone banging on my home's door, and I can see through my barn's hatch door that my mom and the kid's mom are having a conversation. The kid's mom then storms down to the barn. I've never met this lady, but I know an entitled parent when I see one. Joy of joys. She starts going off on me. How dare you make my kids cry? They just wanted to see the ponies, blah, blah, blah. But when she takes a breath, I get my point across. Ma'am, your youngest was crawling under the fence towards 2 large animals none of you know. That Clydesdale is a 2,000-pound draft horse. He can literally crush you, not feel it, and do permanent damage. The pony looks cute but needs an experienced hand as he is very untrustworthy, flighty, and has a tendency to bite. Your children are not allowed near them without my consent and heavy supervision, and never allowed in the pasture with them. Do you understand? When she starts ranting about, well, if they're so dangerous, why do you have them? Are you even allowed to have them? I should call animal control. That crap. They're my personal horses. Yes, I'm allowed to have them. Your kids trespassed on my property. I'm trying to keep them safe. This is not a petting zoo. She huffs off, I continue to work. Later that evening, when the husband gets home, I explained what happened. He's understandably alarmed, and I explained how dangerous that situation is. He agrees. Not that my horses are aggressive, mind you, but it's inherently dangerous in general. You've got a 50 to 200 pound human versus an 800 to 2,000 pound horse. If you don't know what you're doing, you can be seriously injured. Pure physics. So I'm optimistic with his reaction, but no, he's often not home, so I stay cautious. Later in the next week, I'm working from home and I suddenly hear screaming. Not excited screaming, scared little kid screaming. I rush outside and the 4-year-old is bawling in the middle of the pasture, with the pony doing laps around the perimeter of the fence as my Clydesdale slowly approaches the little girl. The 7-year-old is crying outside the fence and calling for her mom, but clearly their mom is not watching them. My initial terror recedes a bit because my Clydesdale is essentially a golden retriever in a horse's body. Sweetest pushover in the world. He gingerly approaches her in a slow, friendly way and being as non-threatening as he can. And with him so close, the pony won't rush them. He's probably about 3 steps from her, but I yell for him to halt, and like a good boy, he does. I make my way in with them and start asking the girl questions. Are you hurt? Being paramount. She's not, but she's clearly scared, so I pick her up and walk out, making my Clydesdale heel to me just in case the pony gets a dumb idea. The mom is still nowhere in sight, so I take them to my neighbors. What precedes is about 30 minutes of screaming and crying. The girl's mother was the one to open the door. She starts screaming at me and firing off questions before my neighbors intervene. I tell everyone exactly what happened, and my elderly neighbors blew up. At her, not me. They screamed at her for being so irresponsible and negligent. How they could have been hurt. The mom tried throwing blame on me, but they weren't having it. My neighbors apologize profusely, and I go about my day until the husband gets home. He came by and apologized too for his family's behavior, and especially the behavior of his wife. I accepted it and said I understood. They're little girls. I too know the allure of magnificent fluffy horses. The mom was at fault for not watching the kids. I'm just glad everyone was okay. The girls were still really shook up, so I extended an olive branch. Because, well, I wasn't an overexcited kid who liked horses once too, just with a horse mom who knew what she was doing. And I didn't want this to completely traumatize them from being around horses. So the next day, I properly introduced them to my Clydesdale, with him in his stall with the inside hatch open and the girls being supervised by their father and me, safe in the barn. They loved it. Clydesdale loved the attention. Everybody's happy, right? Well, except the mom, who took my olive branch as an offer to teach them horseback riding, give free lessons and other crap, but her husband shot it down hard, and presumably so did my neighbors. Since then, it's been quiet. I did, however, install a second electrical wire on the bottom, not just on the top just in case, and yes, they did test it. The 7-year-old got zapped pretty good and got in trouble with her dad. Aside from that, there have been no incidents other than them wanting to pet them when I drop evening feed once in a while. Here's hoping it stays peaceful. But seriously, don't go up to animals you don't know. An entitled mother and her kitty car wash. This is during the time I mentioned living with a relative. Due to circumstances, I lived with my sister and her family for nearly a year. She has not worked outside of the home since before my niece was born in 2008. Both my niece and nephew, partially due to being homeschooled, partially due to the lifestyle my brother-in-law provides for them, are both somewhat entitled brats themselves. While I love them dearly, they got under my skin more times than I care to count during those 10 months. One particular occasion out of many, they decided they wanted to wash our cars. My sister happily allowed them to wash hers, and they took great care with hers. When they asked me, I politely declined and said it didn't need a wash right now. Oh, come on, they want to help out and do something nice for you. Why can't you just let them? I should note here that I was in my mid-30s, and this was the nicest car I had ever owned. As with bodily autonomy, I felt I had full autonomy over my personal property, even if I was living under their roof. I am a grown man. When I say I don't want them washing my car, I mean it. No thanks. I would really rather not. I just washed it the other day, but thanks for offering. A lie, but how was she going to know? I don't know why you're being like this. Just let them wash the car. No. Your uncle is just being ridiculous. He and I will talk about this later. You can go ahead and wash the car. Like many people on these subs, I always said I'm never going to be the guy who just stands there in awe of someone's entitlement and or stupidity. However, there I stood, with my mouth hanging open. They set to work dipping their washcloths in soapy water and haphazardly rubbing them all over my baby. I should also note that small bits of gravel lined the edge of their driveway, and they would occasionally drop the washcloths. It wasn't until after the car had dried that I noticed in the driver door was an enormous scratch in the shape of male genitalia. I showed it to sister, and she denied it was her precious angels who did that to my car. It couldn't have been them. They were so careful with my car. It had to have been. I am very particular with how I wash my car. That scratch did not exist this morning. I would know it's the door I used to get in the car. What are you going to do? Make them pay to fix it? They're kids. Good luck proving it was them. They just wanted to do something nice for you. And I said I appreciated it, but I didn't want them to. You insisted they do something against the wishes of another person, another adult at that, one whom you occasionally trust to be an authority figure to them. Are you trying to teach them to defy authority? My sister gasped and clutched her chest, obviously offended by my statement. She had nothing more to say on the subject, and it was never brought up again, as I knew better than to push too much or my brother-in-law would get involved. While he is a very intelligent man, he is also known for taking up for my sister over pretty much everyone else in pretty much every situation. We both knew it was best to drop the issue as they needed my help, the reason I was staying there, and were not about to piss me off to the point of moving out. Eventually I did, and they took issue with where I chose to move to, which is mentioned in another story. An entitled mother thinks that if your books are on her shelves, they are now hers. I have a fun story to share with you all about my own mother. This happened about 5 years ago. Keep in mind, at the time of this story, I'm in my 30s, married, just bought a house. Prior to this time, we lived in an apartment halfway across the country, so since we didn't have furniture or anything, the only things we took were what would fit in our car, mostly clothes. Now, my mom, the entitled mother of the story, has a bookshelf that covers an entire wall. She also loves to collect books she'll never ever read because she wants to create the impression that she's really well read and book smart. Every section of this bookshelf is categorized according to her own system that no one else knows. One tiny portion of that bookshelf, part of which is hidden behind a desk that has been pushed in front of it, had some books that belong to me. They're all books in the Catalan language, a language spoken in eastern and northeastern Spain. I can read them, she cannot. So naturally, I go to get my books and bring them to our new house. What are you doing with my books? These are my Catalan books. You can't take them, they're my books. You can't even read them. Besides, you're not studying the language, I am. But I need them in my bookshelf. You have boxes of other books you've bought that you can put in their place. But I need foreign language books. Why? In case I ever want to learn another language. Then you can learn one that isn't quite so specific. I've got a ton of Spanish books and some French ones that you're welcome to have. You can't take my books. She threw such a fit about it that I decided to leave them there and come back on a day while she was at work and get them. It has been several years and she still has no idea that they're gone. An entitled mother tries to take control over a medivac mission. So about 10 years ago, I was a corpsman in the US Navy, medical personnel for the Navy and Marine Corps, stationed overseas in a tropical paradise. At the time, I was the second most senior enlisted sailor in our department at a small forward deployed hospital. Part of my duties included being ready to medevac psych patients at a moment's notice, so I always had a medevac mission bag in my barracks room ready to go. Some details have been deliberately changed to protect the anonymity of my patient. Anyways, One day while I was on liberty, not on duty, I got one of those "you leave in 2 hours" phone calls, so off to the hospital I went, my trusty bag on my back. It was there that I was told how weird this medivac was to be. I was flying commercially to the US with my patient, instead of hopping on an Air Force flight, and their mother. Oh, by the way, the mother just happens to be an entitled junior officer. Great. I get all my paperwork together, gather my party, patient and mother, and grab a duty driver to take us to the local civilian airport. Oh, and while we are all dressed in civilian attire, it is important to note that I am 100% on duty and acting officially in my capacity as a non-commissioned officer in the United States Navy Hospital Corps. The mother, however, is 100% not on duty or acting in an official capacity. This becomes very important later. On the way there, the kid is really sweet, but is clearly recovering from a first psychotic break and has a lifetime of therapy, medication, and hospitalizations ahead. This kid has my sympathy, and besides, the kid is my patient. The mother, on the other hand, is clearly self-absorbed and is on her electronic devices or nagging the duty driver, who I know and is an excellent defensive driver, or is just in general complaining about anything she can. Whatever, I can tune her out and do my job. It wouldn't be the first or last time in my career I had to ignore a petulant junior officer and just get my job done. The trouble started almost immediately after checking in at the airport. She turned to me, cleared her throat, and in a tone that suggested that she was in charge, said, "You need to get my bag." Without hesitation, I replied, "No, ma'am. Our flight leaves in 20 minutes. We're going to the gate now." With that, I turned and began to escort my patient to the security screening area. She stammers out some kind of "excuse me" protest, but I didn't quite catch it because I genuinely didn't give a damn. My mission was getting my sick patient to a higher level of care, not playing enlisted butler to an entitled officer. That seemed to get her to back off because we got to our layover destination without incident. We board our international flight and the kid wants the window seat and mother wants to sit beside the kid. Fine. I sit behind them and we take off. The flight is going smoothly. I give the kid their medication after the in-flight meal and the kid and mother settle in for a movie. It was when the stewardess was handing out booze that things started to go really sideways. The mother tried to give her very sick kid, who is on an atypical antipsychotic medication, a flipping Jack and Coke. Without hesitation, I reached forward between the seats and snatched that stuff up. She turned to glare at me and chew me out, but I didn't even give her a chance. I cut her off with my super serious NCO tone and glare. I'm not ashamed to admit I practiced it before my first deployment and state flatly, "Ma'am, not only is the patient underage, but the patient is very sick and is on some pretty serious medication. If there are two things that just plain don't mix, it's alcohol and psychotropic medication. Respectfully, ma'am, I simply will not allow this. I appreciate your compliance." Her face twists in rage and confusion. I could tell that she had never been spoken to like this by a lowly enlisted person, and she was trying to figure out what to say to me. Finally, she said, "I didn't want to have to pull rank, but..." Again, I immediately cut her off. "Ma'am, this is my mission. It was explained to you that you are not in charge here, and the skipper is allowing you to tag along as a humane gesture. I am calling the shots here. This is your kid and you want the best for the patient, I get it. But the best thing you can do right now is to let me do my job and get the patient to the next treatment facility without incident. Our commanding officer placed me in charge, and if the patient shows up to the next facility having drank alcohol, it will be my head on the chopping block. Not to mention that you are putting the patient at risk. Your child could have a genuine medical emergency tens of thousands of feet in the air over open ocean. So, ma'am, if you pull something like this again, I will report it. Thank you for your compliance, ma'am." You see, Reddit, in the US military, positional authority is way more important than your actual rank. This is why an E2 can and will prevent a 3-star general from entering a secure facility without the proper credentials. it doesn't matter that the 3-star is like flipping God to this E2, because not even God gets to access this facility without a proper military identification card, sir. This means that since the patient was released to my custody, and since the chain of command placed me in charge of this mission, my positional authority simply trumped her rank and even her status as the kid's parent, and I had the paperwork to prove it to any authority. Back to the flight. So after being told that she wasn't in charge, she scowls at me and tells me that when we land, she's going to call the cops or something. I don't really care as I lean back and begin documenting the interaction for my own personal cover your butt. Anyway, we land and there aren't any cops called or anything, so whatever she said was an empty threat. We are about to go through US Customs when she insists that she go through Customs first, then her kid, then me. The Jack and Coke incident is still fresh on my mind. I'm convinced she's going to try to pull some shady stuff, so I shut her down. I inform her that in order to maintain her kid's security and health, that I had to go first, followed by her kid, then her. She protests, and the protests start to get us stared at. Somehow we made it through Customs without her or the kid taking flight, or without any of us getting detained. Y'all, she flipping whined and complained loudly the entire wait. I was seriously getting concerned that we were gonna get detained. Nightmare almost over. We get through Customs and we head to get the rental car. All I have to do is get the patient to the next medical facility, give report, turn over effects, and I'm done. I get the car, load everyone up, and then Mother exclaims, "I left my purse!" She begins half flailing and freaking out and jumps out of the car. She tells me that I am to wait until she returns. Now, I'm not some kind of Special Forces ninja or some nonsense, but I have been deployed and I have seen real people get seriously hurt and had to treat those injuries. I've been in real danger, and I would eventually develop PTSD from these experiences. It was then and there that I decided playtime with this delusional officer was flipping over. I turn and look at her through the open car door, and this time, I don't mask my frustration with this woman. Ma'am, I have been on duty and awake for nearly 21 hours. We have a 45-minute drive ahead of us, then I have to give report and turn over medications, medical records, and personal effects. I have at least 2 more hours of work ahead of me before I can get some sleep and fly back tonight. Ma'am, there is no way you are holding this up any more than you already have. This vehicle will leave in 10 minutes with or without you. She stammers out that she will call the police on me for kidnapping her kid. I tell her to go right ahead, but that won't change that she now has 9 minutes and 45 seconds to get her purse. At this point, even the kid chimes in with, "Mom, stop trying to control everything. This guy has taken great care of me, and I'm really tired. Can't we just hurry up?" With that, she storms off and miraculously makes it back with her purse in time. I take them to the hospital with her silently fuming and furiously tapping away at her phone nonstop. Turnover gets done. I bid the kid goodbye and the mother ignores me as I leave. Sweet, sweet sleep. Oh, it's not over. Fast forward a week and I find out that the mother has filed a formal complaint against me. To avoid another long story, I'll tell you that the executive officer shredded it and chewed her out once I explained everything that happened and backed it up with official documentation. I don't know what happened to her or the kid, but I never saw either of them again. This is John from /bash. Please hit that like button to help with the mighty YouTube algorithm and subscribe if you are new. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.